everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be having a look at a curious letter that was found in amongst my great uncle's possessions. I've already written a blog post about this, so some of you might have already seen it, but I thought I'd make a video anyway because it's just such an interesting letter. I spent ages trying to figure this letter out, but let's just dive straight into it. So I'll read the letter to you. It starts off, Cork, Ayr, 17th of March 1944. Dear cousin, your welcome letter received, and me and your Aunt Bridget thank you kindly for the money sent. We had 7 masses said for your grandmother and grandfather, God rest his soul. You have gone high places in Australia, God bless you. I hope you will not be putting on airs and forgetting your native land. Your cousin Huey O'Toole was hung in Londonderry last week for killing a policeman. May God rest his soul, and may God's curse be on Jimmy Rogers the informer, and may he burn in hell. God forgive me. Times are not so bad as they might be. The herring is back, and nearly everyone who had a heart is making ends meet, and the price of fish is good, thanks be to God. We had a grand time at Pat Muldoon's wake. He was an old blatherskite, and it looked good to see him stretched out in his box with his mouth shut. He is better off dead and will burn till the damn place freezes over. He had made friends among the Orange men. God curse the lot of them. Bless your heart, I almost forgot to tell you about Uncle Denny. He took a pot shot at a turncoat from behind the hedge, but he had too much drink in him and missed. God's curse be on the dirty drink. I hope this letter finds you well, and may God keep reminding you to keep sending the money. The Brennans are 100% strong here since they stopped going to Australia. They have kids running all over the country. Father O'Flaherty, who baptised you, is now feeble-minded and sends his blessings. Millie O'Brien, the brat you used to go to school with, has married an Englishman. She'll do no good. May God take care of you all and keep sending the money. Your devoted cousin, Timothy. P.S. Things look bright again. Every police barracks and Protestant church has been burned to the ground in County Cork. Thanks be to God. P.P.S. Keep sending the money. So I was really keen to figure out the source of this letter. I wasn't sure if it was a joke or whether it was serious, but it kept going back and forth between parts that seemed really humorous and then kind of bits that maybe ring true, like the price of fish, like it seems kind of, maybe it's just a letter. So it kind of seemed equally plausible that it could be a genuine letter or some kind of like early 19th century hoax. So I set up a bit of a plan of action. I tried to verify whether anything in the letter was real. Because it's not really clear who it's addressed to, I couldn't really be sure of that, but there were plenty of names in the letter and places that I could check into. I mean, the lack of clear names in it and a lack of a clear address also kind of just feeds into the whole like secretive, like maybe IRA situation. The first thing that was clear to me is that that letter was not written to my great uncle. It was clearly meant for somebody who grew up in Ireland, because it talks about Father O'Flaherty, the guy who baptised you, and Millie O'Brien, the kid that you went to school with. So my great uncle was born in Australia. There was no way that the letter was meant for him. And even though his background is Irish, all of our Irish ancestors on that side arrived in the 1860s to 1880s, and this letter is dated 1944. So any living relative in Ireland, it just didn't gel. There was no way that it was even meant for our family. So the first fact in the letter that I looked into was the hanging of Huey O'Toole, because I figured that would be something that would be absolutely recorded. But my initial searches were completely fruitless. I found that between 1922 and 1954, there were only 35 executions in Ireland, and Huey O'Toole was definitely not one of them. Even more specifically, there was no hangings that were even close to the date of the letter. And then moving forward, Pat Muldoon, Father O'Flaherty, and Millie O'Brien were similar dead ends. I couldn't find anything about any of them. The last thing that I checked was the PS about all of the churches being burnt down, and I found that from the 1920s there were systemic attacks from the IRA, but there was never a time when all of the churches in County Cork were burnt down. So I was really unsure of what to do with the letter. I put it aside. I was like, you know, I couldn't verify anything in it. It was definitely not belonging to my relative. but it was an intriguing letter, so I just couldn't throw it away. So this was way back years ago. A bit more recently, I decided to try Googling some of the phrases in the letter, and I struck gold. I came across the Thompson family history blog written by Boyce Thompson in 2010, and Thompson had uploaded the exact same letter. His copy was ever so slightly different. It referred to America instead of Australia, and there was a few really small like insertions and deletions, but it was definitely the same letter. So it was clearly not an original letter, but I still didn't understand what it was and how did it come to be on different sides of the world, copies of the exact same thing. So I read the comments on the blog and it was really intriguing. There was copies of the letter in America, Australia, and Canada. Some of them were handwritten and some of them were typed. The dates on the letters varied between the 1920s all the way up to the 1960s, though most of them were from the 1940s. The majority of them were addressed to cousin, and the majority were signed off from Timothy, and all of them appeared to have the address Cork. Also, all the people who responded on the blog were not the original receivers of the letter. They were all people who'd found it in amongst their family's things or in a book that they bought somewhere. So nobody knew the source of the mysterious letter. So one theory that I kind of had was that it was some kind of chain letter because it did keep referring to sending money, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was money being sent somewhere, but there was no address given, which suggests that there was nowhere to send it unless the address was on the envelopes. But this happened with every single letter, there was no envelopes. So I kind of dismissed the chain letter theory, and I decided that I think it was just some kind of like early joke, kind of like these days when we send jokes through email and just keep forwarding it. I think this must have been an early 20th century version of that, where people just wrote the letter, copied the letter, sent the letter around. I mean, it is pretty funny, but it's just strange how it's turned up in so many places, and plenty of people actually come across it thinking it's a genuine letter. If you look online now and type in some of the phrases, more and more people are using the internet to realize that these letters aren't real, but they've been hung on to because everyone thinks that they're real. I'd be really curious to know if anyone else out there has a copy of this letter, and if so, do you know its origin? Or do you have a similar story, another mysterious letter that you don't know what to do with? All right, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe, and tune back in next week for my next video. Bye.